watch my hip. I'm going to go in slow motion. This is 1, look at my right hip, 2, and now watch my hip, 3. That way, the second that I hit this arm, boom, when I'm here, the minute I hit the arm, bam, that's where the kick can come in. Okay? That's the idea. Now, as he comes in, boom, I go here, boom, that's my kick, bam. Now I step out on an angle. I can't bend that arm, okay? What would make me bend that arm in a fight is the fact that I actually landed that shot in the nerve, and I actually took the eye. So if we do happen to miss that, okay, boom, and I can't get that, boom, then I just come back up and wrench it on this side. Now that headbutt becomes a lot easier. Now remember, the jab comes in, between this and this is 1 beat, okay? We got that far. We put the half beat in here, which is the oblique kick, okay? So this is as far as we've gotten. So right here is my last shot. Now I could consider this a beat and this a beat, okay? And then this and this and this can be a beat. So the rhythm can be bam, 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 okay? That can all be one flow. Or I can go 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? How I structure the beats tells me how many times I can hit this person. Plus, it throws off his psyche. We're beating him emotionally. Hi, I'm Paul Vunak, and welcome to the Anatomy of a Street Fight. This tape is not about techniques. If you're looking for techniques, I'd recommend Attributes 5. This tape is about practical application. I've seen martial artists from every walk of life. Professional boxers, kickboxers, grapplers, karate men, kung fu men, masters, grandmasters. These people may be great at what they do, but when you take them out of their confines of their specialty and put them into a street situation, well, one mistake and they could lose the fight badly. So the purpose of this tape is to show you the mistakes these people make, and hopefully you won't repeat them. So let's get out our notebooks and we'll get started. In our first segment, we're going to show you how we train every aspect of a fight. The reason I titled this tape The Anatomy of a Street Fight was so we could break down a fight to the nth degree. 70% of all fights involve weapons, and with this in mind, our first segment will involve double sticks. Okay, pat, head, ready, and go. Now, to the novice watching stick fighting, is very much like a novice watching jiu-jitsu. When you watch jiu-jitsu, it might appear that they're just rolling around on the ground, but actually it's a chess match, and you have to pick up all the fine points. That's the same thing with stick fighting. Most people don't realize that. They're not just up there swinging sticks at each other. For every move, the other person is doing a counter. They're aiming for the hand. When they hit the hand, they're skipping up to the head. When the backhand comes in, they're backing up just a tad. The timing, the footwork, the spatial relationship, the line familiarization, the coordination, all this has to come into play. Stick fighting is much more involved than you would think. And when you're in a street fight, if you know how to train the sticks, you have Have Shram and Roy stick fighting. I want you to notice all the fine points on this round. First of all, look at their feet. Watch the footwork. You're not going to see any stances. You're not going to see them get low. They're going to be up on their toes like Sugar Ray Leonard, somebody that boxes well. Next, we're going to move up the body. Look at the hands. Watch the way the hands move. Watch the way they counterbalance. Watch where they're aiming. Look at the targets they're aiming for on the body. Their primary target is trying to hit the hand. We call this defanging the snake. When you smash the opponent's hand, he doesn't have a stick. You can take the head easily. And finally, they're looking for the head. Also look at the gap that they have between each other. This is what we call spatial relationship, trying to maintain that gap. When Roy comes in, Shram will be going out, and vice versa. They'll maintain what we call largo mono range. These are all the fine points that's important to look at. Okay, ready? And go. Now, if that were a real fight, one person lost a stick, what would he do if he couldn't fight empty hands? In our double stick match, one person lost a double stick, what would he do if he couldn't fight single stick? This just exemplifies the point of the ability to flow in a street fight. Details. Look for the sweeps, look for the throws, look for the locks, look for the escapes. Again, jiu-jitsu is a game of subtleties, so pay attention to the small points. Okay, guys, one in, start from the knees. Okay, go. Good. Okay, now, we look at that match, probably went a good 5 minutes. So I want you to understand one thing about a street fight. When you get to the ground, you need to resign to the fact that you are not in a rush. Also, if there were biting and eye gouging going on, I don't think it would have lasted 5 minutes. So we have to keep all these factors in mind for a real street fight. Our next round, we're going to have Diana and Brian knife fight, and from the knife, they're going to go right to the ground into the jiu-jitsu game. We went from knife fighting to ground fighting to kickboxing to trapping. Now, when you're in trapping range, you can't really headbutt, elbow, or knee each other, so you have to simulate it. In knife fighting, we have to wear a glove. So this is about as realistic as we can possibly do it without actually cutting each other and headbutting each other. So this is the way I'd like you to train at home. Now, in this next round, we're going to have Gary and Terry start with a double knife fighting. Double knife fighting gives you something that single knife fighting does not give you. When you single knife fight, you have a tendency to go forward and backward. When you double knife fight, you're going to square off, so your propensity is to go laterally. Also, from the double knife fight, we're going to shoot to the ground right into our jiu-jitsu match. They're going to be rolling around a little bit, and then from there, we're going to pop back up and get into trapping. I have to kind of control this because, again, it's not a real street fight, but this is about as realistic as you can get. Okay, ready? And begin. The most important thing that you need to do in a fight is to be able to flow. If you can't flow from one thing to another, you're going to lose. This is why we have to train things separately, and then we put them all together in the flow just like this. This is how I want you to train at home. Now in this last round, we're going to put it all together. We'll start with double stick. They'll be moving around. When I tell them to drop it, they're going to throw it down and have to fight with a single stick. From single stick, then we're going to go to a knife, and they'll flow into a knife fight. So let's keep an eye on how they move and how they flow from one weapon to another, and how the range diminishes as the length of the weapon goes down. Okay, ready? And go. Now, trying to keep this as realistic as possible, okay? Went from two weapons to one to knife fighting. When one guy hit the ground, we always keep moving. I wanted that round to stay in. Notice what happens when you hit on the ground, okay? One guy is circling, he's moving with his footwork. This is where you really need to use footwork. When you're on the ground, you have to stay cutting and try to work your way up. When you train at home, if something goes wrong, if you break a stick, if you fall on the ground, it's so important to keep moving, keep the action going. Bar, and Ed will be approaching Roy in a menacing way. Now, when you're in an altercation, you have two basic ways fights begin: engaged and not engaged. When somebody walks up to you in a fight, the most common ways fights begin is not engaged. They walk up to you nose to nose. This is your best opportunity to end the fight. You have a headbutt, a knee, an elbow. Fight can be over right there. The worst thing you can do when somebody is this close to you is to back up outside of trapping range and put your hands up and begin the fight, which is what most people do. Or they'll cuss or they'll push until finally one guy ends up hitting the other guy. What I want you to do in a fight is to hit first off, elbow, knee, headbutt, straight blast, and finish the fight. We're going to show you now the way an average fight begins. Break. Now, what we saw here was the worst thing a person can do. Ed approached Roy, and the first thing Roy did was he stood up, he had Ed right here for a nice headbutt, and they shoved each other. They both put their hands up, and then they allowed each other to begin the fight. You don't want to do this. Jeet Kune Do is intercepting. So to intercept the fight right away, you hit first. So our first rule is, the firstest with the mostest is the bestest. Now what you're going to see is basically the same scenario. We're going to have a different result. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm not going to stand up and talk. I'm not going to push. I'm not going to put my hands up. I'm just going to do my thing. Now, as you notice, Joe could have been a better fighter than me. I don't know. I never gave him that chance. I never put my hands up. I never got into a stance. I just started with a headbutt and ended it. Remember, firstest with the mostest is the bestest. Now for our next scenario, we're going to have a 2-on-1. We're going to have Trevor approaching the two people. Instead of splitting the people up, he's going to hit one guy and come back and hit the other guy. This is very common. Jumping right in the middle of a fight. This is not what we want to do. Let's see how the results end up. Now, not too pretty. This is usually what ends up happening when you're trying to fight 4 fists at one time. What Trevor did wrong was he hit the first guy, he came back and he hit the second guy. What you want to do when you fight 2-on-1 is fight 1-on-1. Always split people up. So rule number 2, fight one person at a time, 2-on-1. Now what you're going to see here is the same scenario. The only difference is I'm going to split the people up. I'm not going to fight 2 people at once. I'm going to get my first good shot in, and I'm going to do a straight blast. The best thing about a straight blast is it splits people up when you have a mass attack. Now, what did I do? I didn't fight two people at once. I didn't stay in the middle, hit one person, and then come back and hit the other guy. By straight blasting Ron, that gave me the latitude to back up, get my hands up, and fight the next bad guy. Rule number 2, fight one person at a time. Now in our next scenario is going to be a 3-on-1. A 3-on-1 in a close quarter situation is pretty much a no-win scenario. You have one chance in 100, and that is if you can take the first guy out with one shot, then you straight blast the second guy, that will split them up. Hopefully you'll take him out with a few elbows, knees, or headbutts, then you turn back and engage on the third man to a one-on-one fight. If you don't do that, you're going to be stuck in the middle, what I call the fog of war, and you're just going to get swarmed on. Let's take a look at it. Great. Now, Diallo got stuck in the fog of war. What he chose to do was stay right in the middle. He took one punch, he took another punch here, and he got swarmed on by 6 punches. So remember, when we're fighting a mass attack, always fight one person at a time. Now, same scenario, 3 people on one. Hopefully I'm going to take the first guy out with my first best blow. I'm going to separate the other 2, and then I got a one-on-one shot. That's my only chance at this. Now in this next scenario, Shram and Chris are going to end up on the ground. At that point, it will be a good idea to know how to ground fight. Remember, when you're in an altercation, you don't know what kind of a fight you're going to be in. Could be a weapons fight, could be a one-on-one, could be a two-on-one, could be a ground fight. So none of this information is available to you until the time comes. So therefore, you have to have the ability to flow.
In review, we have a one-on-one, a two-on-one, a three-on-one, a ground game, and we have a weapons game coming up. Just keep in mind what Bruce Lee said for rule number 4. Be like water and be able to adapt. Now this next round is going to be 5-on-2. This is basically a no-win scenario. When you have 5-on-2, you have to grab a weapon and have an equalizer, otherwise you don't stand a chance. We're shooting pool. The most logical thing is our pool cue. I would recommend you just bust the cue. You have your Sinawali. This is a house cue. That'll work. So follow along with us. Boom. Boom. Now, we just had a 5-on-2 fight. As you saw in a 3-on-1, when everybody swarmed on Diallo, you stand no chance whatsoever. So our only prayer would have been to grab a stick, grab any kind of equalizer, which is what we did. So as we look back on the tape, we've had ground fighting, we've had 2-on-1, 3-on-1, we've had weapon work. So remember rule number 5, grab an equalizer. Now for round 6, we're going to go 2-on-1 again. This time the bad guys are coming already engaged, meaning the hands are up and they're on their toes. So I don't have the luxury of just coming in with a headbutt and going with my straight blast. I have to be on my toes. Again, I'm zoning one person away from the other, only fighting one guy at a time. This first round, we're not going to throw any punches. We're just going to show you how the footwork is applied, and we're just going to blend right in with the punches. Okay, guys. Now we're going to do the same thing, throwing the punches. Ready? And go. Last round, notice I was using continuous footwork. Had I have stopped my footwork just for a second, or raised a leg even worse, to try to kick, these guys would have swarmed on me. We would have probably ended up on the ground. So this is the most important point about round 6, is perpetual footwork, trying to zone one person from another. Now, round 7 coming up, we're going to have 2-on-2, the black shirts against the grays. I want you to notice how difficult it is to keep your partner in mind. You're going to notice we're going to have a little friendly fire action, and everybody's going to be hitting everybody. I want you to notice just how difficult this type of fighting is. All right, stay with us. Hey! Now on round 7, our last 2-on-2 match, we start to see things get a little cloudy, what I like to call the fog of war. When you have two people fighting two people, even though they're throwing punches, they're not exactly boxing. It doesn't look like a boxing match. Our next round coming up is going to be 3-on-3. You're going to really see this. I want you to try to keep track of the people. We have somebody in gray, we have somebody in black. Try to keep track of who is punching who, so you get to see exactly what a real fight looks like. Now in round 9, we're going to really exemplify the fog of war. You're in a crowd of people, the punches are flying, and you want to get out. You're going to find out here exactly what you can and can't do. You've got to punch your way out. You can't just walk out. So you'll see the reality of a group fight. Well, I hope you enjoyed the anatomy of a street fight. Sometimes being street smart is better than being technically proficient. Dan Inosanto wrote in his book that his school, the Filipino Kali Academy, is not about techniques, it's about experiences. What we've done in this video is we've logged various scenarios, and hopefully you can apply these scenarios to your own experiences. So, good luck and thank you.